Hey everybody, this is Doomhammer with another Madden update. So we're going to skip the week 13, 14 recaps, and we're just going to get caught up with week 15. We are nearing the end of this season, so I want to do a few recap games here. So this is a great menu, actually. I want to just give a shout out to the My Franchise people because I love this recap. I wish there was a way of prompting this every time I enter it, but like whenever I finish a week, this will pop up. But anyway, so we have the Dolphins who took on the Colts, and this was on Thursday night. 35-28. It was a tough game. This was Kirk Cousins' first start as an Indianapolis Colt. It was a tough game, but he was able to kind of still get his head above water. Chris Johnson, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns. Good performance by him, but it just was not good enough to beat Jordy Nelson, Calvin Johnson Jr., who got 3 TDs there. Nelson got the yards. Johnson got the touchdowns. Newton, having a fantastic season, gets the win on Thursday Night Football. Then the team of the battle of the losers, you got the Ravens versus the Chiefs, 20-9. We see Kaepernick came in a little bit. I think Manning got injured, but Castle, 4 interceptions, not good enough. Abysmal running game. Ray Rice got 44 yards. Then we look at, nothing really to show for this game. Now, I will say something very interesting about the Ravens. They are about 1 or 1.5 games away from the playoffs. And I'll show you later. It's because the AFC North sucks. Moving on, we got the Cardinals, who had a solid road win against the Commanders. We see Andy Dalton with 179 yards, but it was the kind of trio running attack from Dalton himself, getting 37 yards as a quarterback. Then Beanie Wells and Darren Sproles combining for 86 yards. Beanie Wells with 2 touchdowns. We see Michael Vick having a very shallow game, 86 yards. The Cardinals defense kept him under 100 yards passing, and that's crazy. He had 46 yards rushing, but it's a pretty slow game for the Commanders, and they fall to 500, whereas the Cardinals moved to 9-5, which is really good for them. We're looking at they are now in the lead in the NFC West, so that's exciting for Cardinals fans. Then 2 other mediocre teams, or bad teams. Seahawks get the W over Geno Smith. Geno Smith has become the starting quarterback for the remainder of the season. And he's got 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Glennon, 192 yards, but no interception, so that was good on him. Brandon Pettigrew was the number 1 target for him with 5 catches and 80 yards. So this just gets them into a worse draft pick spot. Then what was an interesting shootout here was the Texans versus the Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars were somewhat in a playoff contention for a while. They are the 10th seed right now, so they're a few spots away from any sort of a wild card chance. But they had an opportunity to maybe knock the Texans further out. But the Texans get 43 points, 4 touchdowns by Mark Sanchez, run by Jason Snelling, their fullback. Hopkins almost 100 yards, but with 2 TDs. Pitta and Bennett each getting 1. And then you have Colt McCoy, who just absolutely kept the Jaguars in this game. You see 371 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. This was just a punch after punch, blow after blow of offense. You see Tavon Austin, 133 yards. I think it's Dwayne Jarrett. Yep, Dwayne Jarrett getting 104. Really solid game for the Jaguars, just not enough to come away with it. But that actually helps them more than anything else because that gives them a better draft pick. They did want to have a pride game defeating the Texans, but that did not happen. Then another team that's been trying to get into the playoff picture is the New York Giants, but they fall to the 12th ranked team, and Green Bay is 13th, so they're not really doing much better, but they were able to keep the Giants from having a competitive chance at the playoffs. Their season's most likely done. I guess there's still a mathematical chance of them getting into the top 7, but right now the team with 7 win, or the 7th seed, is the 49ers at 8-6. So they have to win at least 2 more games just to tie. They'd probably have to win out, so I doubt it. But and what's been happening is this defense is getting tougher. You got Von Miller, you have DeMarcus Ware, and so there's some. Von Miller was missing for the first 6 games because he was suspended in real life, so he was suspended in my franchise too. So the Packers are having a lot worse record than they should have. That still may not save Mike Tomlin, because Tomlin ideally should be winning more often. I mean, if Green Bay wins out, maybe he keeps his job, but Green Bay does get the win over here over the Giants. No real standout performer by either team, just a decent win for the Packers. Then this was another interesting game. You have the number 1 seed in the NFC, the Falcons, taking on Pittsburgh, and it was another shootout. Peyton Manning with 4 touchdown passes, 240 yards, and then Steven Jackson, who has been signed because of the injury to Le'Veon Bell, the second time Bell's injured this season. The first time I ran with LeGarrette Blount and Jamal Lord, and they had 77 yards combined this game. But I needed a real solid running back, and Steven Jackson ends up being the guy, 30-year-old, 67 overall. Again, Le'Veon Bell is the main man, but I wanted to make sure LeGarrette Blount and Jamal Lord just were not doing a decent job, so I wanted to bring Jackson in. He's a solid running back for him. Pittsburgh's running game, pretty mediocre, but they're still in the playoffs. They're the 4th seed. They're 5-9. I think they're worse than they have the same record as the Jaguars, who are 10th seed. So they're having a terrible year, but they still could possibly win playoff games. They could win the Super Bowl. Who knows? But I think they've been playing so poorly that they probably won't. This game was actually pretty competitive. Roethlisberger almost kept him in it, but they just weren't able to come away with a win. Then you got the Minnesota Vikings and the Buffalo Bills. You see the Vikings with 24 points, Bills with 14. Tim Tebow just having a modest game. Very mediocre running game here. As for the Vikings, we have RG3, who is the runner-up right now for the MVP race. It's Donovan McNabb, Robert Griffin III, Alex Smith, and then Tavares Jackson. So RG3 is up there. I'm trying to figure out what really makes him up there. Let's look at his season stats. So 3,200 yards, 29 TDs, 15 interceptions. I don't think it shows me his rushing. Kind of wanted to see what he did rushing, but I can find it. I'll go later. I'll see what his rushing stats are, because he's one of the top leaders and quarterbacks in rushing touchdowns, which you can see he got another touchdown in this game. Only 95 yards passing, but he didn't need to do much. The Vikings were able to come away with a solid victory over the Bills. Then we got the Panthers taking on the Oakland Raiders. We see Oakland getting another win. They are the 3rd seed in the AFC. So you see Matt Ryan with 365 yards, but 3 interceptions. But that was enough firepower to get them over the finish line. I think this was an overtime game. So they scored a touchdown. I think it was Green that ran it in. So the Raiders and Panthers had a very tight game. Because of this game, the Panthers have fallen to the 11th seed, so their playoff chances are also very slim. They still have a chance at it. I mean, but it's San Francisco's at 8-6, and the Dallas Cowboys are 8-6, and Dallas is 8-6 as well. So there's a lot of teams they'd have to leapfrog. It's still possible, and they're still going to fight for it, but it hasn't really happened. You see Booker and Tate combining for about 100 yards together. Then you got Vereen and Green about 59 yards. And then this was a game where one of the storylines was trying to get the Bengals 40 points. And as you can see, they didn't score any points. It was pretty bad. We got 2 interceptions from Brock Osweiler. Just awful. I also tried to get Murray 125 yards for a dev upgrade. And sure enough, he did not get it. Tampa Bay, they were rolling. The Bengals were hating. We got 103 yards for Darren McFadden. We've got 48 yards rushing by Gabbert. Only 105 yards from Gabbert, but we got through that game pretty quickly. And Buccaneers are the 5th seed. They're one of the strongest wild card teams. It's between them and the Chicago Bears at 9-5. Then, of course, San Francisco brings it to the 7th seed. Speaking of San Francisco, they were able to hold off the Rams, which if they lost, they would have fallen to 7-7. So that would have been Dallas or Chicago or Minnesota would have been in that 7th seed. But Andrew Luck, 277 yards, but a turnover. Toby Gerhart got a touchdown on 2 attempts. Breeze, 259 yards, 2 touchdowns. We see Dion Lewis and Pittman sharing the workload here while MJD is injured. Now he's back this week, so week 16, they get their running back they picked up from Pittsburgh. Des Bryant, 115 yards, good showing from him. And then Hakeem Nicks was the main target for Andrew Luck. I think the Rams, when they get more weapons, I think they'll be able to surround Andrew Luck better. Right now, like Tim Hightower is their lead running back. I think they can do better here. Receiving core, it's Crabtree. He did play. He just hasn't been having that great of a year, I don't think. No, okay, he got 1,000 yards receiving. He's been doing pretty well. And then Nicks, 662. Marvin Jones. But again, a lot of these running receivers, you got Crabtree and Nicks. They're both 83, 82. But we're still trying to get more options for the Rams. I mean, it's not the same as like Des Bryant. I guess Alshon Jeffrey, James Jones, that's technically a weaker receiving core. It just doesn't play like one. And then there's this one. This was another storyline where I tried to get Terrell Pryor 4 touchdowns and no turnovers. And if I did, he would have added a dev grade upgrade, so he would become from star to superstar. He threw a pick 6. Who did he throw the pick 6 to? It was... Why is that not shown? He should... Oh, interceptions. Okay, well, one of these was a pick 6. I think it was Mitchell that was the pick 6. And then also I tried one of those trick plays on the kickoff, and I lateraled the ball, and San Diego recovered it, and they returned it for a touchdown. So that happened. Pretty bad game for the Browns. They scored in the first 2 drives, as did San Diego, and then after that it was pretty much San Diego from there. Willis McGahee, who they traded for this season, 82 overall. I was trying to get them to be more competitive in what was a very terrible AFC North, which, by the way, they are 1.5 games away. It's the Browns and the Ravens are 4-10, and the Steelers are 5-9 in that division. So technically, the Browns and the Ravens, and technically the 16th ranked AFC team, the Bengals, are technically still in the playoff hunt if they'd win out 3 games, and Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cleveland would kind of lose out. But yeah, Cleveland's in the playoff hunt because of the bad division. Otherwise, all of these teams would be picking in the top 4 or top 5 of the draft, which is just crazy. But San Diego just obliterated 2 touchdowns for Foster, 3 touchdowns for Rodgers, and then 2 defensive touchdowns. Just awful. Now, the New York Jets fall to the New England Patriots. Patriots having a rough year, too. They're the 9th seed. Yes, they're still in the playoff hunt, but they have to have a lot of things going their way. But they were able just to get a little jab at the Jets, giving them another loss where they're trying to keep up and have a higher seed. They are the 5th seed in the playoffs for the AFC. We see 2 turnovers by Alex Smith. That did not help them at all. But Brady with 3 touchdowns, almost 300 yards. Jamal Charles with 125 yards. Had a really good showing for New England despite their weaker season. Then we've got the Detroit Lions and the Dallas Cowboys. So if Dallas won this game, they likely would have been in the playoff picture because they would have been 9-5, which would have put them at the 7th seed. But they lost to Detroit, who is right now the 3rd seed. They just passed the Chicago Bears. So this was a team that was 1-5. And they have just been on an absolute tear these past few games. And they are now the 3rd seed, leading the NFC North. Thanks to Tannehill and, of course, probably their MVP, Reggie Bush. He had 1,300 yards, 13 TDs, and then he's been fairly decent in the air as well. If he's on your fantasy team, he's getting you some good points. He's a must start in every week. Russell Wilson playing decent, but 2 interceptions there. He did run a touchdown in. Dallas is very close to getting into the playoffs. Probably one of the best. This is the best season they've had since Vince Young and John Harbaugh in 2006, I think. It was 06 or 07 when they made the playoffs, and that was the only time Dallas made the playoffs. The rest of the years have been 7-10, or I think one was 6-11. So the 8 wins is already a great record. Good showing for Mike Shanahan. Then on Sunday Night Football, the Bears beat the Eagles, which surprised me because the Eagles were in contention for the number 1 seed. They're right now the 4th seed because they're still ahead in the NFC East. Dallas is 1 game behind them, so Dallas actually could make a run for the division. But you see McNabb with 274 yards, but 3 interceptions. He got hit a lot. A lot of my interceptions come from me trying to throw a pass and avoid the sack, and then it ends up being picked off because the throw is garbage. But Jason Campbell, easy breezy Campbell, gets the win, getting Chicago the 6th seed so far in the playoffs. Campbell also rushing for 30 yards and a touchdown. Good performance by him. Eagles need to step it up. We see Charles Clay with a big 73-yard touchdown. Eagles still probably the most explosive team in the NFL. Then you've got the Denver Broncos, Tennessee Titans, and this was an interesting surprise here because, I mean, it was a home game for Denver, and they were able to hold home field, and that's how they got this. They are locking in the 6th seed here at 9-5. The Tennessee Titans are the 2nd seed at 11-3. They are tied with the Miami Dolphins, who did clinch the playoffs this week at 11-3, and the Dolphins are currently the number 1 team in the AFC. It was between the Titans and the Dolphins so far. Oakland is 10-4, 1 game behind. But we see Tavares Jackson, 1 touchdown, 118 yards, only 35% completion. Freeman came in there for a trick play, got 10 yards. Larry Johnson, who's been filling in for the injured Jonathan Stewart, who is now coming back, and the David Wilson, who was injured. So they picked up a veteran running back just because Hulu. On Hulu, we have Roy Helu over there, and Andre Ellington. Just were not running backs I wanted to be leading my running back core these past few weeks. So I picked up Larry Johnson. Ahmad Bradshaw, he's having a pretty good season. He's 87 overall superstar, 1,000-yard season. I personally don't see him as that great of a running back, but I'm starting to use him more often, and when he's used, Denver plays pretty well. Look at Sam Bradford. He's at under 3,000 yards, 24-11. He's about, what's his 63% completion. Having a pretty solid year for Sam Bradford, who is likely making Denver a playoff team. Now, they also show impact performers like Colt McCoy. Was one of the best performers. 371 yards. He was 17 of 18, 94% completion. Followed by Peyton Manning, who had 4 touchdowns. Sanchez, right? So there's some highlights here that you can take a look at. Scrolling down, we see some defensive performers. I don't normally talk about defense, but 2 interceptions for Jonathan Joseph, 2 for Vontae Davis. Surprise performers, they say Jason Campbell. I think his overall is so low. Colt McCoy, Dwayne Harris getting 106 yards for San Diego. Hester, who's not a surprise. He's a performer that can get 100 yards because he's so fast. Dwayne Jarrett, he had a good week with Colt McCoy. Hopkins, who I don't know why he is seen as a surprise, but he's a rookie, I suppose. Mike Glennon, I guess that was a good game. I guess he got the win. Geno Smith, the rookie performance, they put him as a top rookie. Oh, these are top rookies. Zach Ertz with 106. He's been a pretty solid tight end. It's normally been Jason Kelsey for most of the season, or Travis Kelsey most of the season in Washington. And then we look at weekly leaders. We got a tie for touchdowns. Chris Johnson with rushing yards, rushing touchdowns. There's a lot of ties for rushing touchdowns. Julio with a 200 receiving yard game, 3 touchdowns for Johnson. Dante Hittner, the best safety in the league for Pittsburgh, getting 12 tackles. B.J. Raji, 3 tackles for a loss. Very good pick for Cleveland. He helps the Cleveland defense immensely. A bunch of 2 sacks people, 2 interceptions. There are several deflections. And we have a few defensive touchdowns here with Palmer, Ray Edwards, Vontae Davis, and Levante David. And then here's some injuries that happened this week. And so a lot of these players, if they're not on a playoff team, they are injured reserve. Let's take a look at the standings. I've been talking about these. So as you can see, the Miami Dolphins are leading the AFC. Jets are still in contention. Patriots are majorly outside looking in. They have probably a mathematical shot, but it's not a good one because they need to get to 8-6, which if they got 9-8, they'd have a chance, but that's pretty tough to do because they have to beat out San Diego. They have to beat out Houston, which I guess is possible, but I don't think Houston or San Diego are going to lose out. I don't really see New England guaranteeing all these wins. This is up in the air here in the AFC North. I can't believe how bad all of them are. So Pittsburgh, who was 5-6, are now 5-9 after a 3-game losing streak. there's a chance that they could lose their division to Baltimore, to Eli Manning, or to the Browns. And now all of a sudden a team that's picking top 3 or 4 in the draft is now picking in the teens or in the early 20s because they made the playoffs. The South here, we see the Jaguars and the Colts falling. Titans and Texans still in contention there. And then Oakland having a fantastic year. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones clicking. Denver having a great season. And then the Chargers, who are also, right now it's 3 teams from the AFC West making in the playoff picture. And then you got a very competitive NFC, where the Dolphins and Titans have kind of almost run away with it. You've got Atlanta with 1 game ahead, and then Detroit could be the number 1 team. Chicago could be the number 1 team. Eagles, Cardinals, Tampa. So there's a lot of competition here in the NFC. Right now it is the 49ers who hold that 7th seed. Or is it? It is, yeah. Interesting. Houston's supposed to be the 8th seed. Oh, they are the 8th seed because Pittsburgh. So it's up to the Chargers, and then Pittsburgh's the underlier. And then the worst teams is the Bengals, the Browns, the Chiefs, the Ravens. Crazy. The Saints, Colts, Packers, Bills, Seahawks. They will be in contention for the worst pick in the draft. I mentioned about seeing RG3's rushing stats. So we're going to go here. We're going to go to stats. So rushing, we see RG3 with 405 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. Why he's in that MVP discussion. Now we go here to our top performers. We see Matt Ryan leading the league. I don't know why he's not an MVP candidate yet, because he's winning games, got 35 touchdowns. Tom Brady is leading in yards. And you see McNabb, Roethlisberger, Carson Palmer leading touchdowns. We got Brady, Roethlisberger, McNabb, Manning, Ryan. Brady does lead the league in interceptions, having his Brett Favre impersonation. Then it's Tebow, Gabbert, Roethlisberger, Campbell, and then Quinn, who has been benched. Then McFadden reclaims his rusher title. I can't talk. Sorry, everybody. But 1,300 yards. 1,300 yards for Reggie Bush, Chris Johnson, right behind them. Ryan Matthews, Adrian Peterson, top 5. We look at touchdown rushers. Matt Forte is just slaying it. 20 touchdowns for Miami, followed by McFadden, and then you can see the rest there. And then receiving, we got Mike Wallace. We have Julio Jones, Deshaun Jackson, Percy Harvin, Calvin Johnson Jr. Mike Wallace having a fantastic freaking season, 1,600 yards. He could be close to that 2,000 yards receiving. Good on him. And then Calvin Johnson Jr. is definitely the touchdown guru. He's getting multiple touchdowns a game. Fantasy points right there. I was wondering why Bilo Powell was up there. All right, so it's Julio Jones, Mike Wallace, Deshaun Jackson, Calvin Johnson, your top fantasy leaders. Actually, let's see. Top fantasy leaders and quarterbacks is McNabb, RG3, Newton, Brady, Roethlisberger. So, yeah, your 3 MVP candidates are the ones that have the most fantasy points there. Most fantasy points for running backs is... and rushing. Okay. Well, Ryan Matthews is 320 fantasy football points, followed by Portis. Then when we look at, just moving on with the stats for the season, tackles, you can take a look at those league leaders. Then J.J. Watt, 12 sacks this season. Definitely setting the example. And Barkevious Mingo's in the running for Rookie of the Year. So I guess all he had to do was go to Dallas and not Cleveland, and he was going to do well. So he's a potential Rookie of the Year candidate. Interceptions, we got 10 from Ladarius Webb, 8 for McKelvin, 7 for Josh Norman, who has been doing pretty good in his sophomore year. Pittsburgh having some really decent young prospects here. David Jones, I don't know who the hell that is, but he's been their solid lead cornerback. Kicking, I don't know if... see. I guess everyone's missed a field goal except for Mike Nugent, Brandon McManus, Randy Bullock, Mason Crosby, Nicholas Setta, Josh Brown, and Sean Schwisham. Then we look at team stats here. And this might be a harder way to demonstrate things. We may look at that later. Okay, I'll just go to the rankings right now. Because you look at the top power rankings on offense, it's the Giants, Raiders, Eagles, Falcons, Buccaneers, top offenses. Worst offenses is Buffalo, Seattle, Kansas City, Texas, and the Saints. Whereas defensively, we see the Broncos are number 1 defense. Why they're doing so well. Falcons, Bills, Buccaneers. So Buccaneers are top 5 in offense and defense. And so are the Falcons, top 4 and top 2. And then Baltimore is somehow the top 5 defense, even though they're 4 and 10. And then you got the Texans at the bottom. It kind of makes sense. Panthers, who used to be an elite defense, now just falling apart. The Jets, Cowboys, and Giants. So we have 3 more weeks. We got week 16, 17, and 18. I will be trying to get through these games as quickly as possible and as efficiently and smoothly. Normally for the teams that are really bad, I just try to get through them as quickly as possible as we make our way to the playoffs. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoy this series as well. This is the year 12 of a very long time playing Madden, from Madden 20 all the way to Madden 25, keeping this alternate reality alive. So, yeah, I'll check back with you when we complete more weeks.